At some point in my marriage, I had to say out loud to myself that my value is more than what my hands do. And then I had to sit with the fact that the man I had married did not act in a way that showed that. To him, I felt like I was the cooking, the cleaning, the childcare, the management. I was the labor, the wife appliance. And today I want to talk about utility marriages, what they look like, how they function, and how you can start to believe that you are worth more than the work you produce. I'm going to start with a pattern that took me a while to name. I noticed that my then husband seemed to maintain relationships that were only useful to him. His relationship with his own family, with friends, with me, it felt transactional. When the relationship had profit, he showed up. And when it didn't, he didn't. And as for me, that profit was utility, it was work. And it didn't feel like it was love or companionship or friendship. All that felt optional. In Lundy Bancroft's book, Why Does He Do That? It describes this as a core feature of a controlling partner. When a partner is treated like an instrument for the controller's benefit, rather than as an autonomous person with their own needs and desires and inherent worth. And I found that this looks very normal on the outside. It's never abuse in the dramatic sense of hitting and punching and screaming and name calling. It looks like a spouse who doesn't do housework, a spouse who checks out when you need emotional support, who is present at his own convenience. And I remember in one case when I would cry, there was this irritation attached to it. And later he would confess that when that happened, he lost respect for me in my ability to handle things. And it's easy to be told, and in my case, I told myself that I'm being too much, I'm being too demanding, I'm asking for so much, I'm a nag, I'm nitpicky. But I want to say that clearly that it's not too much. It's a human being asked to be treated like a complex human being. I'm going to go into a small segue, but I want to talk about learned helplessness and weaponized incompetence and how sometimes these can interplay. Learned helplessness is when someone thinks that they really can't do things. They've tried and they failed so many times, or they've been told that they're incapable of doing it, so they just give up trying. In The Courage to Be Disliked, I find it the word where you become discouraged, where you lose the courage to try again and to continue to try and improve. And I do feel that patriarchy has done a disservice to men in this case by indicating that they are incapable or naturally inferior in doing things like childcare, house care, cognitive load, and things of that sort. Now, with weaponized incompetence, it's when somebody pretends that they can't do something, or they do it really badly on purpose so that somebody else ends up doing it for them. And I'd had so many situations where I felt that my then husband was either refusing to do it correctly, refusing to learn, wanting it to be done in a way that suits him, and frustrating the person trying to show them how to do it. I remember trying to teach him how to swim and teaching him the way I learned how to swim, which was you do the front crawl first before you learn the frog. And he said, no, I just want to learn the butterfly right away. And I said, no, but you first have to learn how to do the front crawl because it helps you with breathing. Then maybe we can teach you the frog. And he was just so adamant on learning in this way that it got frustrating and I could not teach him. And I said, okay, you know what? Maybe I'm too close to this. Go learn from somebody else. I had similar situations with learning how to do the dishwasher, how to assemble IKEA items. The part that I found frustrating was he would see the effect of his way not working and he wouldn't try to learn or improve. He would just do the same thing over and over again. With the dishwasher, he would just put the cups the wrong way and they'll come out greasy, and I'll mention it. Then he would do it again the same way and I'll mention it. And I'll say, okay, just try my way once. And then I'll stop talking. But then I had dirty dishes, and then eventually I just stepped in and did it. And it feels like it was this way of helplessness to ensure that one person is always doing the majority of the labor. And it felt really unfair. And over the years, what happened was I just slowly started taking on more things in the house because things weren't done well, and I wanted to keep a good standard of living. And it sent a message to me. It said that my time, my energy, my convenience, they did not matter. That what mattered was that he was not inconvenienced. And when that message was repeated daily in little small choices that were made all the time, it becomes the air you breathe, and it becomes the definition of what you are worth in the relationship. Because for me, while everyone talks about how it's so important to have self-worth and self-worth, a good chunk of our self-worth is in relationship with other people. They tend to mirror back what we're looking for because they help us adjust, they help us get better. And so when the person that is mirroring back to you the most is giving you this kind of message, there is a very strong temptation to have that erode your self-image. So I started keeping things in diaries, and when I did not have enough time to write them down, I started recording it, trying to understand why I was so upset about something that seemed small. It was just the dishwasher. It was just the bathrooms. It was just getting the lawn mowed. It was just helping me set up for our kid's birthday party. But I remember in my recording, I said, the difference is that these are my things. This is my home. And you are not caring for my things. So it tells me that you don't care for me. It feels like disdain. And it tells me that you treat me with disdain. And it took me a long time to realize that I wasn't being dramatic. I was reading the situation correctly. One of the insidious things about weaponized incompetence is that eventually it actually turns into learned helplessness. Now, learned helplessness is when somebody really believes they can't do things well because they've tried and they failed, or they've been told they're incapable, or they lose courage to attempt it. But the issue is that each time you load the dishwasher badly and act like, oh yeah, I'm not going to improve from it, after a while, you will say, I'm just bad at loading dishwashers. I'm bad at taking care of this baby who's always crying because the practice of taking care of the baby wasn't done. So it feeds into itself and it becomes real. Now, I don't know if that's the story in my relationship, but what I do know was the impact on me, and it was so painful. Now, going back into the idea of being that utility wife, why that hurt is that wound of being in a utility marriage was landing on top of an older wound that was already there. I grew up in a really patriarchal family from a communal culture and a religious culture, the trifecta. And it defined a lot of a woman's value by her service. The value that you are valuable when you are useful is not new. It's the water we swam in as children. We were praised for being helpful, sacrificial, self-denial. What was missed was the intentional message that we had value because we simply existed. In the book, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, it talks about how children of unavailable parents often develop a role self, which is a version of ourselves that perform for others in order to get connection. So if you were giving more love when you were being useful, you unconsciously become an adult feeling that love will come based on your productivity. And you naturally find partners who may confirm that belief. Sometimes because it's the kind of love you recognize, and sometimes because you don't call it out when it starts happening because you don't recognize that something is off. And the good part about healing is learning that that can be unlearned. So I want to go back to the thing I said at the beginning. I need to believe that my value is more than what my hands do. And I want to say that to you if you are in this situation. You are more than the meals you cook. You are not the laundry you fold or the childcare or the smile that you provide when you have guests over or the check you bring from the office. You're not the emotional labor you carry so that everybody else can function. These are things you do. It's not who you are. And if you are in a marriage or coming out of a marriage where no one has reflected it back to you, I want to say that. And I want you to let that absorb inside you and accept it. You are valuable because you breathe. That is the kind of love you need, and it's the kind of love you deserve. In The Courage to be Disliked, they gave an example, which I like to use. If you have a great relationship with a mother or a sister, imagine if you heard that they got into a car accident. So now you're terrified. You're like, oh my God. You get to the hospital. They tell you that she's stable, but we put her in an induced coma to just heal. And maybe in a week or two, they'll try and bring her out of it. Imagine your feeling of fear reduce. So this mother or sister or family member is not moving, is not speaking, is not doing anything. But just because they are alive, you suddenly feel grateful, you feel good. So their purpose to you right now is just that they are alive. And I feel that that is the core of value. There is this poem about us to be like trees, that the trees don't perform, they don't do anything, they just exist. And in that existence, they just happen to provide oxygen for us. The algae in the ocean, it just happens to provide the air we need. It's not doing it for us. It's not making any effort. It's not trying hard. It just happened to do its own thing. And that thing just happened to benefit us as humans. Can we look at ourselves and other relationships in this way? That just by being yourself and existing, you will provide utility. So you don't have to be defined by it. You don't have to try. That's all I'm going to say for now. If this resonated with you, here are some books I would say you should read. Why Does He Do That? Running on Empty is another great book by Jonas Webb about emotional neglect. And if you're trying to work on the family of origin part, try Lindsay Gibson, Children of Emotionally Unavailable Parents. So please subscribe if you want to keep on this journey together and leave a comment. I read them even though I'm a little delayed in responding. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.